Britain seeks extradition of man accused of spying on RAF Akrotiri for Iran. Britain's first Overseas National Security Act case centers on a critical RAF base. Britain is seeking the extradition of a London man accused of conducting hostile surveillance at RAF Akrotiri and passing information to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. British counter-terrorism police say Rashad Sultanov, a 44-year-old dual British and Azerbaijani national from Islington, was arrested by Cypriot authorities on July 17, 2026. He remains in custody while proceedings are conducted to determine whether he should be sent to the United Kingdom to face charges under the National Security Act 2023. The allegations have not been tested in court, and Sultanov must be treated as innocent unless convicted. Yet the case is already significant. Police describe it as the first British investigation using the National Security Act in relation to alleged offences committed in an overseas territory. More importantly, the location at the center of the case is not an ordinary military installation. RAF Akrotiri is one of Britain's most strategically valuable positions outside the United Kingdom, a forward operating base from which aircraft, personnel, and intelligence capabilities can be projected across the Middle East. The alleged surveillance operation. The Metropolitan Police say the investigation concerns incidents at RAF Akrotiri between the 11th of May and June 22, 2025. Sultanov allegedly conducted what officers call hostile surveillance of the base, which is legally classified as a prohibited place. Investigators further allege that information gathered through this activity was shared with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, which British police describe as a foreign intelligence service. The Crown Prosecution Service has authorized charges under Sections 3 and 4 of the National Security Act. Section 3 concerns conduct intended to assist a foreign intelligence service. Section 4 covers entering, inspecting, or approaching a prohibited place for a purpose prejudicial to the safety or interests of the United Kingdom. The legislation was deliberately drafted to apply to certain conduct taking place outside Britain, allowing proceedings to be brought where the necessary jurisdictional conditions are met. Commander Helen Flanagan, head of counter-terrorism policing London, said the case demonstrated that Britain could use the act overseas when military bases were allegedly targeted by hostile states. She also credited cooperation between British and Cypriot law enforcement agencies, alongside the Crown Prosecution Service and National Crime Agency. An extradition request is not a finding of guilt. Cypriot courts must consider the request through the applicable legal process, while any eventual prosecution in Britain would require the allegations to be proved to the criminal standard. Why Akrotiri matters so much. RAF Akrotiri occupies an unusually powerful position on the eastern Mediterranean island of Cyprus. Britain retained sovereign control over Akrotiri and Dhekelia when Cyprus became independent in 1960. Those territories give the United Kingdom a permanent military foothold close to the Levant, North Africa, the eastern Mediterranean, and important routes into the Gulf. The Ministry of Defense has described Akrotiri as an extremely busy site that supports regional operations and acts as a forward-mounting base for deployments across the Middle East. Aircraft operating from the base have participated in missions against Islamic State targets in Iraq and Syria and against Houthi positions in Yemen. It also provides logistical, surveillance, air defense, and evacuation capabilities during regional crises. That makes information about Akrotiri potentially valuable to any state seeking to understand British and Allied military activity. Even observations made from outside a secure perimeter can sometimes reveal patterns. Aircraft movements, changes in operational tempo, newly deployed equipment, maintenance activity, and heightened security procedures may collectively provide clues about forthcoming operations. None of this establishes what Sultanov allegedly saw, recorded, or transmitted. British authorities have so far released only a limited public account, and the evidential details are likely to remain undisclosed unless and until the case reaches an open courtroom. But the alleged target explains why police are treating the matter as a national security investigation, rather than an ordinary trespass or photography incident. Surveillance allegations came before a drone strike. The chronology gives the case a particularly serious dimension. The alleged surveillance occurred in May and June 2025. Months later, during the intensified regional conflict involving Iran, Israel, and the United States, RAF Akrotiri was struck by a drone in March 2026. The British government subsequently confirmed that fragments from the device were being analyzed for foreign military hardware. Defense ministers also described an expanded British air defense presence in Cyprus, including hundreds of personnel protecting the base amid repeated air raid warnings. There is currently no publicly established evidence that the alleged surveillance attributed to Sultanov was connected to that later attack. That distinction is essential. The existence of an espionage allegation involving a military base, followed months later by a hostile strike against the same installation, naturally invites speculation. But chronology alone cannot demonstrate operational coordination, targeting assistance, or causation. Any claim that the alleged surveillance enabled the drone attack would go materially beyond the evidence that British police have made public. Nevertheless, The combination illustrates the broader threat faced by overseas bases. Modern attacks do not necessarily begin with a spy penetrating a command center or stealing classified documents. States and their proxies can combine open-source intelligence, commercially available imagery, cyber reconnaissance, local observation, and human reporting to build a detailed picture of a target. Akrotiri's strategic value also explains why the base has featured prominently in the wider confrontation between Britain, the United States, and Iran. Its importance gives Britain reach across the region, but that reach also makes the base visible, politically controversial, and vulnerable to retaliation. Britain is expanding its response to Iranian state threats. The extradition effort comes during a wider tightening of British policy towards Iranian state-linked activity. In July 2026, the government designated the IRGC under new state threat legislation intended to disrupt organizations accused of conducting hostile activity on behalf of foreign governments. Supporting, materially assisting, or obtaining benefits from a designated body can now constitute a criminal offense under the strengthened regime. The government has previously described the Iranian threat as wide-ranging, persistent, and sophisticated. Its official response to Parliament's Intelligence and Security Committee said the activities connected to Iran included intimidation, espionage, and threats directed at people and institutions inside Britain. The Akrotiri investigation should therefore be viewed as part of a wider security contest rather than an isolated allegation. British authorities have dealt with several recent cases involving alleged Iranian intelligence activity. In one established case, former soldier Daniel Khalife was convicted of spying for Iran after collecting military information and attempting to build a relationship with Iranian contacts. He was later sentenced to more than 14 years in prison. In another pending case, a man was charged in 2026 with allegedly conducting surveillance against an Iranian journalist based in London. Those allegations also remain subject to court proceedings. The pattern described by Western security agencies is one in which Iran may use a mixture of intelligence officers, intermediaries, criminal networks, and recruited individuals, rather than relying exclusively on traditional embassy-based espionage. That approach can make attribution slower and prosecution more difficult. The individual physically observing a location may know only part of the wider operation, while instructions, payment arrangements, and intelligence customers may be separated across several countries. The first test of Britain's overseas powers, the National Security Act 2023, replaced and expanded parts of Britain's aging espionage framework. Its provisions were designed partly to address modern hostile state activity that did not fit neatly within older laws. These activities can include helping foreign intelligence services, preparing acts of sabotage, obtaining protected information, or inspecting sensitive sites for purposes harmful to Britain. The Sultanov case could become an important early test of how far those provisions can be enforced beyond the domestic territory of the United Kingdom. Britain's sovereign bases in Cyprus occupy an unusual constitutional position. They are British overseas territories under UK sovereignty, but their security inevitably depends upon close practical cooperation with the Republic of Cyprus. The arrest and extradition process therefore carries both legal and diplomatic significance. Britain must demonstrate that its national security laws can protect overseas military assets while working through another country's courts and respecting the safeguards attached to extradition proceedings. Success would send a warning that alleged foreign intelligence activity against British installations can be prosecuted even when conducted thousands of miles from London. Failure to secure extradition would not necessarily disprove the allegations. It could instead reflect legal, procedural, or evidential issues specific to the extradition request. However, it would raise questions about whether Britain's expanded extraterritorial powers are as operationally effective as ministers intended. The unanswered questions. Several important facts remain unknown. Authorities have not publicly disclosed the precise form of the alleged surveillance, what information was supposedly collected, how it was allegedly transmitted, or what evidence connects Sultanov to the IRGC. It is also unclear whether investigators believe he acted alone, whether he received payment or instructions, or whether any other people are being sought. Reports from the period of his original detention in 2025 linked the Cypriot investigation to concerns over a possible Iranian-backed plot against Israeli citizens. British authorities have not stated that the extradition charges relate to such an alleged plot, and the two matters should not be treated as identical without further evidence. The defense case is also not yet publicly known. Sultanov is reportedly contesting extradition, but his response to the underlying allegations has not been fully presented in open British proceedings. These gaps matter because espionage prosecutions can create an information imbalance. Authorities may possess sensitive evidence that cannot immediately be disclosed, while the public sees only the accusation and the strategic importance of the alleged target. Responsible coverage must therefore resist turning a charge authorized by prosecutors into proof of a completed intelligence operation, a base that provides power and attracts danger. RAF Akrotiri gives Britain an operational advantage few European countries possess. From Cyprus, British forces can respond rapidly to military escalation, protect regional allies, conduct reconnaissance, support evacuations, and sustain operations across a wide area. During the recent Iran crisis, Britain reinforced the region with aircraft, helicopters, naval assets, and air defense personnel, underlining just how central Cyprus remains to UK strategy. But strategic geography works in both directions. The closer a base is to the conflict zones it is designed to influence, the more exposed it becomes to surveillance, missiles, drones, cyber attacks, and political pressure. Akrotiri is valuable precisely because it sits within operational reach of some of the world's most unstable flashpoints. The allegations against Sultanov have not yet been proved. Britain's extradition request must now survive judicial scrutiny in Cyprus before any trial can take place. Whatever the eventual verdict, the case has already exposed an uncomfortable reality. Britain's ability to project military power from Cyprus depends not only on aircraft and air defense systems, but on preventing hostile states from quietly mapping how that power operates.